The Terrorist is Watching by Wisława Szymborska. Before we start the today's lesson, I kindly invite you to go through the first two videos. To watch the first two videos so that you can get a clear-cut idea about the first four stanzas of the poem. Today we are going to deal with the last part of the poem. Anyway, The Terrorist is Watching by Wisława Szymborska is a poem about real-life bombing explosion which takes place in front of the narrator and in front of the terrorist as well. The bomb in the bar will explode at 13:20 and now it's just 13:16. There's still time for some to go in and some to come out. So from the first stanza we understand that the bomb is placed in a bar where a lot of people gather. It's a crowded place. It's a time bomb. And the prime target of the terrorist is to kill a large number of ordinary people. And it's a time bomb, so 4 minutes left. Since 4 minutes left, though it's a very limited period of time, we get a clear-cut idea that anything can happen during these 4 minutes. There's still time for some to go in and some to come out. The people, those who go in, will surely get killed. And the people, those who come out, will survive. The terrorist has already crossed the street. The distance keeps him out of danger. Oh, what a weave, just like a movie. The terrorist who set the bomb to kill a large number of innocent civilians values his life. So he goes into a safer place where he can protect his life. And he's waiting until the bomb explosion takes place so that he can witness the success of his effort. What a weave, just like the movie. That is from the terrorist perspective. Because terrorist is eagerly waiting until the bomb explosion takes place to see what has happened. Because he's enthusiastically waiting there as he has to report to his leaders. He is enthusiastically waiting and he is trying to make himself enjoyable through this incident. So the terrorist does not have any humanity and is waiting until the bomb explosion takes place. But the narrator, he is helplessly waiting. I explained this in the previous video. The narrator is helplessly waiting until this human tragedy takes place. So for the narrator, it's a human tragedy. For the reader, for you and I, it's a human tragedy. But for the terrorist, it's his target. He's watching it enthusiastically. A woman in a yellow jacket. In the third stanza, the writer is giving us minute information about different people, those who come in and go out of the bar, different customers. A woman in a yellow jacket, yellow is a kind of a weak color, so she is going to be victimized. A man in dark glasses is going to survive. Teenagers in jeans, they are talking. 13, 17 and 40 seconds. The narrators or the bomb's digital clock informs the time to the reader from time to time. So we get the feeling that certain minutes, certain seconds are left before the explosion. 4 minutes is expanded. 4 minutes are expanded. 13, 17 and 4 seconds. The short one is lucky. Is getting on a scooter. So the narrator is happy about the short person who's going to survive. He's going to get away from the place where he is. But the tall one, he's disappointed about the tall one. So these two lines give us a clear indication that the narrator and the terrorist are two different individuals. Because if the narrator is the terrorist, He should not be happy about the people, those who are living. He should be happy about the ones, those who get killed. But here, this narrator is sad about the ones, those who are going to get victimized, and happy about the ones, those who are leaving the place. So, from this stanza, we can understand two important things. One, the narrator and terrorist are two different individuals. The narrator is watching the incident, the terrorist is also watching the incident. And the second thing we observe here is life is so fragile. The decisions taken by these people either to go in or to come out just for a refreshment might cost their lives. 13, 17 and 40 seconds, fourth stanza. The girl, she's walking along with a green ribbon in her hair. Green is a very lively color. The color green suggests that these young lives are going to get victimized in this scenario. But then the bus suddenly pulls in front of her. What happens is the narrator is watching the girl, but a bus obstructs his vision. So he cannot identify whether the narrator he cannot identify whether the girl has got on the bus or not. When the bus moves away, the girl is missing. So the narrator becomes confused. Is going to wait. The narrator is going to wait until the bomb explosion takes place in order to clarify his matter. We will see when they carry them out. It seems that narrator does not have any humanity on this. We will see when they carry them out. So the narrator is waiting until the bomb explosion takes place in order to clarify whether the girl has got on the bus or else she has gone inside the bomb. If she has got on the bus, no wonder she will survive. But if she has gone inside the bar, that will be the end of her life. So this suggests the fragility of life. Life is very unforeseen. You cannot predict about life. And life is very fragile. At any time, we might lose our life. We might lose our life. We might throw away our life. So that depends on the minute decisions taken by us in a fraction of a second. Okay, now let's look at the next stanza. 13, 19, somehow no one is going in. Another guy, fat, bold, is leaving though. Wait a second. Looks like he's looking for something in his pockets, and at 13, 20 minus 10 seconds, he goes back in for his crummy gloves. So 13, 19 means we get the feeling that only 1 minute left before the explosion. Just before the explosion, it remains only 1 minute. 1 minute before the explosion. That means the time further reduces. The time further reduces. The remaining time is only just 1 minute. Somehow no one is going in. Somehow no one is going in is a very strong statement. So it shows a kind of a sigh of relief. It shows a kind of a sigh of relief. He seems to be happy. He seems to be delighted that nobody is going in because no one is going to be victimized. Somehow no one is going in shows that the narrator is happy as nobody is going inside the bar so that no one will be victimized. So another guy, fat, bold, at this time the writer focuses on another person. Who's that person? He gives little more information of this person. Who's that? The fat, bold guy. A person who is fat and bold is leaving. He is leaving, the fat, bold guy is leaving means he has already gone away. He has already left the bar. That means he is away from the danger zone. So the fat bald guy has almost survived. He has gone away from the danger zone. He is away from the danger zone in the sense he will survive. Another guy, fat bald, is leaving though, but he waits a second. What does he do? He waits a second. Even though he leaves, he does not leave the place. He does not leave the bar. Instead, he waits there for some time. Waits a second. He looks like he's looking for something in his pockets. So his reaction gives the feeling to the reader that, and as well as the writer, that he has forgotten something. He has left something behind the bar. So when he was inside the bar, he has left something behind, so that now he has to go back to collect those things. Apparently, it looks like he has forgotten his crummy gloves. At 13:20 minus 10 seconds, what does he do? Wait a second, looks like he's looking for something in his pockets. This fat poor guy is looking for something in his pockets. Then he goes back in for his crummy gloves. Right? He goes back in for his crummy gloves. At 13:20 minus 10 seconds, he goes back in for his crummy gloves. In order to collect his gloves, he goes there. He goes there to collect his gloves. So what happens? The person who has almost survived throws his life away in order to collect something very cheap. Crummy gloves, some old dirty gloves. So he goes there in order to collect his old gloves. That means he throws away his life on something very cheap. He gave up his life. He gave up his life. He entered the bar once again in order to collect his gloves. So what does this clearly indicate? This clearly indicates to the reader something very important. What is it? This clearly indicates to the reader the fragility of life. The life is so fragile. The fragility of life is shown through these lines. The life is very unpredictable. You can't predict about life. Anything can happen at any time. The fragility of life, for example, it shows the fragility of life and unpredictability of life. For example, he has already survived. He could have gone home directly, but unfortunately, he goes back in for his crummy gloves when only 10 seconds left. 10 seconds before the explosion, he goes there to collect his gloves, means he threw away his life. So our lives are so fragile. Our lives depend on very simple things that we make. Sometimes we make hasty decisions, we make quick decisions. These decisions might cost our lives. At any time, our life will be wasted, or sometimes we will get various kinds of benefits of life because of the decisions. So that depends. Sometimes we get advantages, sometimes we get disadvantages, sometimes we ruin our lives depending on the very hasty decisions, depending on the decisions that we make. All of a sudden we sometimes lose our lives. So the writer shows the unpredictability of life and the fragility of life through this stanza. This reveals the reality of life, the real nature of life. So our lives are not permanent. We might lose it at any time. If the fat bald guy had known that he is going to lose his life, he would never have gone inside the bar. But he went in because he did not know that there was a bomb inside. So that is the fragility of life. Anything can happen at any time. You cannot determine what will happen. You can't decide what will happen. Our lives are so unforeseen, unpredictable. Anything can happen at any time. So that is what we learn from this stanza. We can look at these points. The stanza deals with the fragility or unpredictability of life, or in other words you can say life is very unforeseen. It shows how little is needed either to survive or to die. We might die at any time depending on the decisions that we make. Sometimes we do things even without doubt, spontaneous. Because of spontaneous reactions we might fall in trouble. So these things are displayed in this poem. Fatpool guy is a person who could have stayed alive, who could have lived for another couple of days or couple of weeks or couple of years if he had not gone inside the bar. He went inside the bar for the second time. That means he threw away his life. Because of something very cheap, he threw away his life in a grave danger. So this stanza emphasizes that the life is very unforeseen. Right? Visual imagery. Now in this poem, throughout the poem you see a lot of visual imageries. These visual imageries and the alliteration used in the poem shows the tragic nature of life. We are moving towards the last stanza. In the last stanza, 13:20 exactly. Right? So now it is the last moment. So last moment is the most difficult moment to tolerate. We can't tolerate the last few minutes of anything. Now for example, think of your school trip. When you are planning your school trip, you spend a few weeks and give a lot of information to the teacher. With the help of the teacher, you organize the trip. Right? And you wait until the last moment comes. The previous night, do you think that you will be able to have a very relaxed sleep? No, not at all. Right? Even before your mother, you get up. Why? The last moment, the last minute, last hour is the most intolerable duration. So 30:20 exactly, this waiting, it's taking forever. This is the most anticipated moment. Whose anticipated moment? Both the terrorist and the narrator. The terrorist is eagerly waiting until the bomb explosion takes place in order to see whether his efforts have become fruitful. And the narrator is also eagerly waiting until the bomb explosion takes place because he wants to clarify certain things. But here the narrator is not waiting enthusiastically. The terrorist is waiting enthusiastically because he wants to see the fruits of his effort. But the narrator is waiting helplessly because there are going to be a human tragedy in a moment. So he is helplessly waiting there because he does not know, because he cannot do anything. He is helpless. And both of them are eagerly waiting, but the terrorist is waiting enthusiastically, but the narrator is waiting helplessly. Any second now? No, not yet. So this is the climax. This is the climax of the poem. No, not yet. Yes, now the bomb, it explodes. Now the unique feature in this poem is that the writer does not give us further information of what had happened after the explosion. So the reader, that means you and I, we have to realize what happens after this, because the writer's intention is not to talk about the violence, ferocity, dangerous nature of terrorist attacks or terrorism. The narrator's effort is to show us the fragility of life, unpredictability of life, how little is needed either to survive or to die. So the writer does not go on describing further incidents. Instead, he closes the poem at the climax. Climax is the highest level of the point of the poem. So there, the bomb explodes. The climax brings the reader to the detonation of the bomb. So the bomb explodes and there should have been a huge disaster in the bar. This is the moment that both the narrator as well as the terrorists are eagerly waiting for. The entire poem is full of fear, anxiety, grief, doubt and tension. In the last moment, it is filled with anxiety, it is filled with fear, it is filled with terror. Both the reader as well as the writer becomes very anxious to know what happens. So the climax shows the explosion of the bomb in the end. Now we have come to the end of the discussion of the poem, and one thing I want to highlight is the main idea that the writer is trying to convey the reader is the fragility of life. In a way, he is talking about the destructive nature of terrorism, how ruthless the terrorism is, how inhumane the terrorist is. But most importantly, the writer mainly deals with the fragility and the unpredictability of life. We are moving towards the last one, that is the poetic technique. Poetic techniques, there you have, it's a narrative poem, and then you have the visual imagery, right? The poem, it's a narrative poem, you have the visual imagery, you have the irony, simile, alliteration, assonance, cinematographic technique, countdown technique, diction, rhetorical questioning, climax. At the beginning, you see that this is a narrative poem. The poem is presented in the form of a narration, in the form of a story. So, it's a narrative poem. What kind of a narration can you see over there? You see a kind of a third person narration, and the narrator is there right throughout the poem. So we call it an omnipresent narrator. So this is a narrative poem. The second technique used by the writer is visual imagery. Visual imagery means when you read the poem, you can generate an image of the incidents of the poem in your mind. For example, the bomb in the bar will explode at 13:20. So there is a picture generates in your mind. A picture generates in your mind a parcel bomb, a bar, and a bomb in the bar. So these things come to your mind at once. So the terrorist has already crossed the street. The distance keeps him up. You get the picture of a terrorist who's walking in a suspicious manner. Right? So these are visual imageries. Throughout the poem, the writer uses a series of visual imageries in order to make the poem easy to understand and make the subject matter more clearer to the reader. Right? So the third one is the use of irony. The writer uses an ironical situation where just like a movie. So this is an ironical situation. This is an irony because for the terrorist, it's a movie. He is enthusiastically waiting until the bomb explosion takes place. And he needs to derive pleasure from this incident. But the narrator is helplessly waiting. He can't do anything. He is desperately waiting there because he can't do anything. He is helpless. So this is an ironical situation. And then, just like the movie, also shows you that it's a simile. So irony and simile. Now I have given you 4 poetic techniques: narrative poem, visual imagery, irony, and simile. Then you have bomb in the bar. Bomb in the bar. So the alliteration is adopted by the writer there. Alliteration. Alliteration means the repetition of the consonant sound of the words. Bomb in the bar. Alliteration. Then, when you think of the poem, you see, bomb in the bar will explode at 13:20. One scene. So the poem has the first scene as the bomb is placed in the bar and the terrorist moves away. In the second scene, you can see a terrorist going away into a safer place. The terrorist has already crossed the street. In the next scene, a woman in a yellow jacket, she is coming in. Man in dark glasses is going out. Teenagers in jeans, they are talking. Next scene. So likewise, the poem comprises a series of incidents or scenes which are connected to each other. So these series of incidents together form the story of the poem. So the poem is presented in the form of a film. Rather than a drama, it is presented in the form of a film, because there are series of them. You have a series of scenes that are coming one after the other in the poem. So we call it cinematographic technique. The poem is presented in the form of a cinema, film, cinematographic technique. So the next is that the indication of the time. How does the narrator indicate the time? The bomb in the bar will explode at 13:20. Now it's just 13:60. 4 minutes left. So when the writer gives the digital time indicator to the reader, he calculates, okay, 4 minutes left. Then again he says 13, 17 and 4 seconds. Then he calculates, the reader calculates the remaining time. 13, 17 and 40 seconds. He calculates the remaining time. The time reduces. The remaining time reduces from time to time, as the way the narrator gives us the digital time indicator. So this is what you call countdown technique. මේ පුතාලා දැකලා තියෙනවා අර බෝම්බ එකක් ටයිම් බෝම්බ එකක් පොකුරනකොට ෆිල්ම් වල එහෙම අර ටික් 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 ගාලා වෙලාව අඩු වෙවි යනවා. And that is what is called countdown. So writer uses the countdown technique in the poem, and this countdown technique very importantly generates fear, suspicion, tension, anxiety in the narrator's mind, and it generates those human feelings in the reader's mind as well. Then you have the rhetorical questioning. Was she dead dumb? Did she go in or not? Those are all rhetorical questioning. And finally, you have the climax of the poem. The climax means the highest level of the story. The bomb in the bar will explode at 13:20. The terrorist has already crossed the street. Then the woman in a yellow jacket, man in dark glasses. Likewise, the interest or eagerness of the reader goes up. Then it reaches the highest level, 13:20 exactly. So at that time the bomb explodes, and it is the climax of the poem. So these are the poetic techniques adopted by the writer in order to convey the theme, the main idea of the poem or the subject matter of the poem to the reader. So I think you might have watched all these 3 episodes that we have discussed. So you might be able to understand the poem very well. With the use of another episode, with the use of another video, I am going to discuss a few questions, 2 questions of this poem, related to this poem, and there we will be able to clarify some other important things. Okay, thank you very much. Thanks for watching.